Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking with Devesh Khanal. Almost messed up the pronunciation already. Devesh received his PhD in material science and engineering, where he went on to author 8 peer-reviewed publications. His early work experience involved developing financial models and forecasts for biofactories that were producing upwards of millions of gallons of product per year. And in 2013, he went off to start GrowthRock, which was actually then known as Devesh Design. And we're going to dive right into that in a second here, what that transition was. But GrowthRock is a conversion rate optimization agency that has been working exclusively with e-commerce clients since 2016. And so for anyone listening, you can tell why this may be relevant to me looking to kind of get into the same space here. But during that time, he met our last guest, Benji Hyam, and they both decided they should work together and start a business over really what was an argument at a dinner party. And, just like as context, there's a lot of things I want to ask you. But first, I just want to dive in, as I mentioned before, into that transition period from you got your PhD, you started working, maybe there was a little bit of overlap there, but then you transitioned out of the world of science. What made you make that transition, or what was going on at that time in your life?
It was a slow transition full of multiple steps where each step maybe was not remarkable or less remarkable, but the accumulation of all of those steps led to being whoa, I'm really far from where I started. Right?
Yeah.
So the walking analogy and baby step analogy is perfect for this. So let's see how fast I can talk through all the steps, because there were a lot of them. So I'm in this material science PhD program. I'm wrapping up that, which means you're writing your dissertation. You're not doing that much research anymore. And this is in the hard sciences. So there was a lot of lab-based research that we were doing. And then I had this itch basically to do businessy things. In hindsight, I can put a lot of things together and be like, oh yeah, as a kid, I did this one thing that every person in business does, right? I've had this from the beginning, but you don't know. As a kid, I also played basketball, right? I'm not trying to go into the NBA, you know what I mean? And so anyway, so it turned into me doing some presentation design. And what does that mean? Literally designing PowerPoint presentations just on the side. My PhD advisor didn't know, very few people knew. And why was that? I was starting to not like some of the science stuff. So it was just getting annoying. My PhD advisor was really hardcore. And that, in addition, I took some business classes where they were trying to commercialize some of the technologies. Through that, I met a VC, Jim Matheson, at that time of Flagship Ventures, and was working with him and just helping him coordinate interviews with scientists to help think about the business side. So you see a slight step of thinking about business stuff now, but still in the context of commercializing hard science technologies, solar cells, biofuels, blah, blah, blah. And then from that, I got introduced to this biofuels company that you read off in the bio. And we had dinner with the CEO. I started doing an internship with them, turned into a full-time job. And that ended up being this kind of we were doing a lot of these financial models and projections of if and when we commercialize this biofuel technology, what could it look like? So I was taking maybe some level of my quantitative skills, physics, bachelor's, whatever, but doing really, it's P&L stuff. It's simple Excel math, right?
Yeah.
But that just got me into the kind of the business side of things. That startup started failing, as startups tend to do. And I was taking on some more presentation design clients. One of them was this real estate website thing that I won't get into with a bunch of realtors. And I thought it was interesting. And I said, can I be a co-founder instead? Because you guys don't know the first thing about a tech startup, so realtors. And they were like, great. And so we hit it off, did that for a while. That also started failing, right? So I have many business failings under my belt.
Yeah.
But that taught me web stuff. I had to be okay, we need to put up this website. We need to create this website for people to bid on houses, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I just started learning HTML and CSS, which in hindsight was kind of stupid. But, I did it. And then I started taking the design sense that I had from the presentation design stuff and applying it to web design. Somewhere along the way, I got a coach. So some people that I should acknowledge along the way. Starting that first business was via some of Ramit Sethi's stuff. This is 12, 15 years. I don't know. My sense of time skewed, so nobody hold me to it, but like a decade ago plus. And I took his Earn 1K course back then. It was like so long ago. I paid $500 for it. I don't know how much he charges now. And I started the presentation design thing. Made well over $500, which made me happy. Yeah. And then along the way, another sort of coach mentor showed up, which was Brian Harris of Video Fruit, now called Growth Tools. And he was just starting out himself. And I always seem to enter when these people are just starting out, and therefore all of their stuff is extremely cheap. So he was just starting out, and he was like, oh, I'm going to like help people do business coaching. And I was like, it's probably going to be really expensive. And it was $100 a month.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I was like, great. I will easily, like, this guy doesn't know how cheap this is. So I signed up and was like doing it forever. And now we've, stayed in touch for a long time. He's actually, ironically, now just started as a client of Grow and Convert. So that whole thing is flipping, which is kind of funny. And he was helping me with this like real estate startup / my own presentation stuff. And that startup was failing. We were focusing on my own stuff. And I was like, I'm thinking about web design, blah, blah, blah. And he put this bug in my head where he said, have you thought about this idea of A/B testing? And I was like, what is that? And no, that's not true. I had heard about it from this one guy at the real estate thing, but I didn't know much about it. I'd heard about this tool called Optimizely. And he said, well, like, you can test this stuff. It may be like an interesting thing because instead of just designing a full website, it can be an ongoing service. So you get recurring revenue where you're testing stuff. So I said, great. And Brian's really good at helping people immediately start a business, like literally take action tomorrow type level of like tactical work. And so he said, okay, email a bunch of people, get your first client. I emailed a bunch of people, including, I always keep running into people that are now web famous. Brian Dean of backlinko.com, an extremely well-known SEO site now. And he responded, and I said, hey, I'll A/B test your site to get more email subscribers. And he said, cool. I was just at a conference where I was talking about it, so your timing is great. And we got on a call, and I was like, yeah, I can do this stuff for $200 a month. And he was like, great, I'll buy double that. And I was like, what do you mean? And in hindsight, what was funny is he was just like, $200, like whatever you're doing for $200, just do double, and I'll pay you $400 because it's like a trivial amount of money. And I was like, great. And I remember my wife, it was like, when I told her about this, I was like, check this out, I'm doing this thing. And she was like, $400? Like, what the hell are we going to do with $400? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, just hang on, like one day, and in one of the rare times I've been right over her. So anyway, so that started this whole thing. I worked with Brian for a long time. And I was just like, I didn't know anything about A/B testing. So that's how we got over to this. And to go all the way to an agency, it was like, I then reached out to some people that were doing A/B testing, more people to acknowledge. Arun Srinivasan of Funnel Envy, which is now pivoted to kind of a B2B personalization software tool. And oh God, I forget his name, but the CEO of CRO Metrics, I met him over coffee once. So these people that were doing A/B testing agency type stuff in the Bay Area where I am. And I learned I can't code it myself. So the moving from freelancer to agency happened really slowly for me now, right? Okay. So I can't code it myself. So I was like, well, I need to find like a coder because I was literally like trying to drag and drop things in Optimizely and it was breaking and I didn't know anything. And so I went to Upwork, I tested a couple coders, and I ran into one guy, Chad Dolan, that worked out really well. And we worked for, years, 3, 4, 5 years. And so that was the start of it. I didn't still position it as an agency. I don't know what I positioned it as, a consulting service.
It was just,
It was just Devesh Design. That's just what it was. And like, I had no marketing system. I had no way to get leads. That was the start of my arguments with Benji. When I like do content marketing, and I was like, no, I tried it. It doesn't work. And he was like, you just don't know what you're doing. So, so that like, I had that. And then at some point I was like, I need my design work to improve because I was basically this jack of all trades where I was kind of crappy at everything, but I could kind of get it done. And so I was like, okay, I need to do design. So I got like, I think some designers. And then I think it just slowly built from there. The big transition on the agency is when do you get someone to do the thinking, strategy, and talk to clients? That took years. I was just the main point of contact for the clients. I was running all the calls. I was thinking of the strategy. I was managing the whole thing. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on. So let me pause for a second here, Shane, and you tell me where you want to take this. Like, is this a conversation?
No, this is perfect. This is definitely what I want to talk about. I think I think continue on that idea about where people get stuck, because I think that this is something that
I
I've thought
assume the
about.
audience is? Who
So
should I assume the audience is?
the audience is other people that are looking to start or have already started an agency. So they're just looking to improve or start their own, go from basically consultant to agency owner. And I think that what you're talking about right there is like the core difference between going from being a consultant, being an agency where you are still just being the main consultant, to actually having other people do the strategy for you. And I think that hurdle is definitely something that I'm interested to hear you talk about.
Okay. Yeah, that's the biggest one. And to this day, it is hard to let that go. So just to set some context, I don't know what Benji told you, what lies Benji told you, JK, is that even at Grow and Convert, Benji and I are on every single client call still. So, like our strategists run a lot of it. So so Grow and Convert works really well. So let me just talk about the end result, whet the appetite, right, of the listener, and then we'll talk about the transition, right? So end result, I'm now really into this whole like deep work philosophy and time blocking. So I have this spreadsheet where I track every minute of my time. So right now we're in the Shane Rawstat podcast call, time block. So in that, then with the spreadsheet, I do this analysis. And the last few weeks, the amount of time I've spent on straight Grow and Convert, now we're talking about Benji and I's content marketing agency, not the GrowthRock A/B testing that I was just talking about. On that one, the amount of time I spent on actual client agency stuff was really small. I'm almost embarrassed to say the number of hours, because I don't want to be one of those people that is like, like I have this business, it runs without me, I make all this money, I want to beach. I'm not on a beach. I work my ass off, right? But like, because there's a lot of other stuff to do. There's like marketing stuff to do and whatever. But was really small. So in other words, a lot of that stuff happens without me. Now, of course, I have Benji as well, and he takes care of a lot of that. So I should give credit where it's due. But that's the end result. But going back to what I was saying, how hard it is mentally to let go of that, is that despite that, the time I still spend, we're still on those client calls. There are client calls where I'm literally muted the entire time I'm doing other work. Don't tell our clients that. I hope they don't listen to this. But it's not a secret, because I'm on video. Like everyone can tell. I'm not saying anything, but I'm still on it. And so why is that? It's actually for a good reason. So I, for the longest time, was like, what am I not understanding? And sometimes I still feel like this way. I feel like I'm just starting to go over that hump. That's where I am mentally. If you're listening and you're like, oh, does he have a fully functioning operational agency and he can take a vacation for 2 months? I would feel very uncomfortable if I just didn't talk about anything in 2 months, right? I think it would still run without me. Now, could Benji and I both leave for 2 months? Would it run without us? Probably. But there would be some stuff to take care of when we came back. Let's put it that way. So we're just starting to cross that hump, okay? So that's where I feel like we are mentally. The reason it feels so uncomfortable making that transition is actually, you're not sort of stupid or like weird or whatever for thinking that. It's for a really good reason, which is, chances are other people you hire are not going to do as good a job as you. That's true, and it will never go away. And that was something that took a long time, because I thought, looking from the outside at other agencies, my God, like, what are they doing differently? These other people can do a much better job than them. And I'm sure that's still true, because when we talk about agencies, a lot of people listening probably going to think about these kind of small agencies that are like, like have a name in like the Twitter sphere of like marketing agencies or whatever. Yeah. There's also a whole universe of agencies that no one ever hears about, but they're just like these massive multi-million-dollar companies, design agencies or whatever. In that case, for sure, those are run like big companies. The people that are operationally working are extremely good and better than maybe the CEO or original founder or something like that. Okay, so like we'll leave those. But for the vast majority of agencies that are still making millions of dollars in revenue a year, if you talk to the owners, owner after owner tells us, oh, of course. Like, I could do a much better job on any of these accounts than these people, right? Now, there's all these asterisk grains of salt. I'm sure some people listening will object to what I'm saying, but this is my experience. And I'm talking largely about marketing agencies. That means SEO, PPC, CRO type agencies, right? And it's not an owner who's a business guy of a development shop who's like, I can't do a better job. They're developers. I'm not. Like, of course. So that's what I'm talking about. And I've also heard from the client side, when I was running everything, I've heard multiple clients tell me, especially the A/B testing side, this is great, Davish. Don't ever get bigger. Because when you get bigger, I'm going to have to interact with these 20-year-olds that just got out of school, that don't know what they're doing, that don't really care, and they don't have the expertise. Like, they're not as good. They don't care as much. It's the caring. They don't care as much. This is just job. They're like waiting for the weekend. They're not the owner of it as you. And I hate working with those smaller agencies. I've had people list off brand name agencies that are like, oh, we tried all of them. It just sucks. We fired them.
Yeah.
Because the owner is on the sales call and does it. So it's for a good reason. Nonetheless, the other side is you have to accept that. I've been told you have to accept that if they can do 80%, 90% of the level of job you can do, if they can specialize and do a few things well, that's good enough. Because in the end, like, you're running a company, right? Like, imagine some huge famous companies. Like, you don't think Steve Jobs would feel that he was better at design decisions of every one of his products than the people in his company? Of course he did. From every account of books written about him, he just thought that everyone else was an idiot. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, you have to kind of accept that. That's the reality of it. And so the transition happens like this, I think. Okay, this is a really interesting topic. So hold on, let me gather my thoughts here. So let me tell my story, and then we can maybe do some stories of that. So back to the GrowthRock story. I'm A/B testing websites. At that point, it wasn't specialized on e-commerce. It was like any website. First, I delegated the stuff, and I hired. And by the way, at that time, it was all like contractor, Upwork, 1099 stuff. Hired and delegated. So no need to like be like, I'm hiring a full-time person with a W-2. Like, that's a big jump, right? Like, go easy. And so that I hired stuff that was like stuff would need unique expertise that I wasn't going to do. Like, I needed a coder. Like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? So like, do that first. And there's different frameworks of thinking about it, but the framework I think about it is from that deep work thing, Cal Newport, is think about all of the work you do in terms of how much time would it take to train a relatively smart recent college grad without a lot of experience to do this task, right? And so if it's stuff like the strategy of what you're doing, the thinking, the talking to the clients, the selling, the pitching, that takes a lot of time to learn how to do that. It just takes reps. Because there's so much nuance there. That's like years of work. Right? So it's okay to hold on to that till the very end, is my philosophy. That is what you should hold on till the very end. So the other stuff, delegate that first, you know? And then the other caveat I would say is, this has what has never ever worked for me, and I've tried multiple times, is this whole VA personal assistant thing. I've heard this advice from so many different people, including people I listed off as being mentors and stuff I learned from earlier, like hire a VA, personal assistant, don't book your own calendars. None of that has ever worked. Like, Benji and I book our own meetings. I spend time booking meetings. I send emails saying, are you available at these time slots? They come back without, because here's my other thing is, think about how much time you actually spend doing these things. And I'll tell you, for the vast majority of people, you don't spend most of your time booking meetings. Like, what are you, like, you know, Tim Cook? Like, come on. Right? And so, like, who are you, Elon Musk? Like, you're not just booking these meetings. And so just don't worry about that personal assistant nonsense. Hire for a very specific client work-related task that you can offload once. So in my case, that was that. If you're running a PPC agency, right? For example, let's say you're running Google ads. There are a lot of people who don't charge a lot. Oh no, let's do an easier one that I know more close to heart, because I don't know that much about PPC. Is SEO. It's a growing company as a content agency, SEO. There are a lot of people that can do keyword research for not a lot of money. You go to Upwork and type like SEO consultant, people all over the world. It's just keyword research. Like, that can be really time consuming in SEO. Like, you're typing in all this stuff into the keyword tool, then you're putting it in a spreadsheet, and then you're so can you not hire someone to do that, put the volumes of searches, put where the client is already ranking, which keywords they're ranking for, blah, 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 and then present that to you in a spreadsheet? That is actual client work that's valuable, not pretending that you're some high-flying executive with a personal assistant. Get out of here. What is the value does that have? And it's something that you can delegate, you can look over, so sorry.
No, that's fine.
And then what else? Like, design stuff. If you've been like doing some of the graphic design and all, you can delegate that. That's client facing. I don't know. So those are some examples. Right? You think of it for you. And then work your way up. And slowly, at some point, you have to make the big leap, which is now, who can do the strategy? So in GrowthRock, it came a point where I was like, I think I had 4 or 5 clients. I had a whole team, 3 or 4 contract developers throughout the world, a QA person, 1 or 2 designers, but I was the interface of it, of everything. And so it got too much. And I was like, if we get 2 more clients, I'm screwed. So at some point I need to make this leap. And I had tried taking some of these designers and turning it into that a couple times before. So I tried multiple times and failed. And I was like, their ideas aren't good enough. The way they run client calls is not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And at some point I was like, I was making enough money. And this is where also some operational stuff. I was making enough money where I was like, you know what, maybe I need someone. And this I actually think was unnecessary, but nonetheless, I'll tell my story. Maybe it's that when I hire dollar per hour people part-time, I'm not getting that kind of dedication and commitment and quality. So let's just make a leap and hire someone for like a good salary.
Yeah.
Because I can afford it. At that point, I had enough clients where I can afford it. And I think that's a natural transition where I've heard some other people tell me, like a PPC agency owner, multi-million-dollar agency now, and he said he was running 12, 14 accounts by himself before he finally hired like an account manager.
Yeah.
You know, so like run the amount of accounts, delegate everything else that's part of the account, do the strategy, talk to the client, be the face, keep those clients happy because no one's going to do as good a job on that as you. And then decide to make the leap. Now, I did a full-time person. In hindsight, I don't think you have to. If we do it again, and right now GrowthRock is just running at that one person. This is Dan Ramirez of GrowthRock, and we've been working together maybe 1.5 years, 2 years now. And he's now runs the accounts. There was a good stretch, and for certain accounts, for some clients, I'm not even on the call. I haven't been on a call in like 6 to 10 months or whatever. And we have a one-on-one where he updates me. For other accounts, I am on the call and I'm like muted a lot. Sometimes I talk, blah, blah, blah. Right. For new accounts, I generally come on and I start and I like give a good impression. And then like Dan is taking over. I think actually in hindsight, we could have probably, and if we do it again and expand beyond Dan and get more clients, if we do that, we'll just do it on a part-time basis. But that's not a huge deal. You can do either. If you're having trouble finding a quality person on a dollar per hour part-time basis, then do more yourself and then and if you want to expand to an agency, then take a leap and have your strategist be that person. So this is find the So in a lot of the agencies though, you can have one of those little roles turn into that. In my SEO example, the keyword research person probably thinks they can do other SEO, and a lot of them can.
Yeah.
So like you can take the person and be like, who is the smartest, and hire a bunch of them and be like, damn, this person's really good. And they'll stand out to you. It's just so obvious in all of their interactions. And then start to give them more and more accumulation. That's one route. And that's probably the route I would recommend. So in the PPC example is like, if you're running like, Google ads, can you not find someone else that claims to be a Google ad expert and give them one aspect of it? Set these up, monitor, write this report, check these stats, report back, fill out the spreadsheet of like the ad CPC stats every week or whatever. And then the natural person will emerge. They'll be like, hey, Shane, I noticed that like this thing should happen in this way. And I actually think this other thing should happen. And be like, okay, like this person, I would go to them and I would trust them on my team. And then have them be like, okay, can you start to do a little bit more and a little bit more and run these accounts and do this thing? And I think that is that last leap. The whole time, check, divide from an agency operational perspective and a money perspective. One thing that's been absolutely essential and has been awesome on both agencies is because of my financial planning, whatever background, it's weird, these parts of your life that show up to be useful. Yeah. I have always taken all of our costs and I allocate it per account. So like how many, whatever you're paying your first strategist, say you decided to go the full-time W-2 route like I did with Dan of GrowthRock, that's doing the A/B testing, is you divide their salary by the number of accounts they manage. And then add on the development cost for each of the accounts, the design cost for each of the accounts, or whatever, and make sure on a client-by-client basis you're profitable. Yeah. Like otherwise, if you don't do that, what happens is the details of non-profitability are lost. You have revenue from all the clients, it's a big lump sum. Then you have all your expenses is a big lump sum. And you're like, well, we made some money, this month, and you don't
Yeah.
realize that on some of the clients, a lot of times being spent and you're not profitable. And that's not, that can lead to some shitty situations. You lose, say, your most profitable client. You didn't know you were most profitable because you weren't tracking profit and loss on a client by client basis. You lose them, and all of a sudden you're losing money every month. You're like, what happened? It's like, to be really careful about that.
Yeah.
Because the difference is when you're a full freelancer, it almost doesn't matter because your margins are really high because you're doing so much of the work. But when you start to turn into an agency, you grab it. There are a lot of like big agencies. I mean, I'm told big agencies 10, 15% margin is average or good.
Yeah.
20% margin is great. And so like, because it's just people cost a lot. That's like the biggest expense, right? And so you need to start to become careful and think about those things. All right, I've talked about.
For sure. No. This is great. One thing that, we talked about like GrowthRock in the early days and versus, Grow and Convert and the difference there. And one thing that Benji, when I talked to him, he was like, one thing that would be an interesting conversation to have or topic to talk about is the differences and the struggles between growing the like GrowthRock brand around maybe the service versus growing the Grow and Convert brand, and why maybe it was easier for you on the Grow and Convert side than it was on the GrowthRock side. Because from him, he said that he thinks that, I guess the conversation we're having, trying to back out of the strategy, like how it was maybe a little bit more difficult on the GrowthRock side. Why do you think that building up or was it more difficult to build up the brand and reputation for GrowthRock than Grow and Convert?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is going to take the conversation in a totally different direction, which is branding and positioning of service businesses, a topic that is really core to what I'm talking about. That's why Benji brought it up, because it's literally something I'm working about and thinking about a lot right now. So I have a lot to say on that. And as you can tell, if I have a lot to say, it may never stop, Shane.
Well, that's fine. I'll cut if you're going too far. I'll cut you off. But I'm happy to hear, because this is definitely a big conversation. This is something that I'm thinking about right now as I position myself specifically. Like, just to give you context, myself, I'm moving into the world. I've been freelance, designer and essentially web designer and developer for a few years now, and I'm moving into, and I want to focus specifically on really conversion focused design and development for Shopify stores, and eventually getting to a point of offering CRO services. That's my primary goal, to get to that point of being able to have some form of, a recurring service that I could offer and provide value and really be accountable to the results that I'm getting. Because I think in the freelance web design world, it's like, it's not easy to say, hey, you did this improvement. But so that's like the direction that I'm moving in. And so I'm thinking about all of these things right now. And I'm sure anyone else who's listening that is starting or has started is probably thinking about them as well.
Yeah. Okay. So this could take the rest of our half hour. There's one other thing that I wanted to bring up before I get into this. So tell me if you want to take the conversation in that, and I'll save some time for it. Is this idea of, do you even want to go to an agency? Because I think that there's an interesting conversation of, because the margins are way higher as a freelancer, that if you can take some of the stuff I'm about to talk about on branding and strategic differentiation and just keep it solo, there are people that live really nice lives and make arguably almost more money solo because they're keeping so much more of the profit of the revenue. So something to think about. We can talk about that.
Yeah. And that's where, I think that's something worth, just mentioning. For me right now, I think when I think about agency or service, it's really just creating a brand, which is, again, the conversation we're about to get into, creating a brand around either a company name, essentially, and saying, hey, this company is providing the service, and I am, you could either be like the front facing person, like I am the one who runs this company, or you can just be kind of fade to the back a little bit. But I think that more in the direction that I'm going is like, hey, this is me, but this company specifically offers this set of services. But I would be the one doing a lot of the work up front, and then maybe offering, outsourcing some of the work and, hiring, et cetera. But it's definitely something where, it's all options worth, considering. But on that front, do you think that there's a difference between just keeping it like essentially ShaneRosted.com versus like GrowthRock.com? You know what I mean? Devesh Khanal versus GrowthRock. Like, is there a big difference in the way that you position it if you're going to stay solo versus like, would you put a brand around it? Would you stay just your name? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so there could be. I think by and large, probably it doesn't really matter. If you're going to stay solo, people will just automatically attach the two things and say, okay, like Acme Corp is Shane Rostad of Acme Corp. And so if you're going to stay solo and your face and you're not fading to the background, it almost maybe doesn't matter whether you have a company name attached to it or not.
Yeah.
I think a company name is maybe a good thing to have just as a hedge, because you always have the option of just having it be like largely you. But if you have a company name, you then have the infrastructure in place, or I don't know, you have some level of brand stuff in place to kind of step away and the company kind of taking over. So, but let me go back. The key thing on the branding and positioning side, the realizations we've had to answer your question about GrowthRock versus Grow and Convert, is that successful service businesses, this is my current thinking, I reserve the right to have it changed tomorrow. Is that the successful ones have something that I'm calling strategic differentiation. Is that there are a lot of, especially marketing agencies, that's the agency world I'm familiar with. There are a lot of them. Like, what does it take to say you're a digital marketing agency? Put a website up, say I can run this for you or that for you, or
post even people's Facebook account, like
or even in your space, like there's a lot of people that can design and develop sites. Like, it doesn't take much to say you have that. Strategic differentiation is when you land on a service site, or not even land on the site itself, so forget about the details of the site. When you are exposed to that brand, it could be via their site, could be via other content they produce, their blog posts, their newsletter, their podcast, anything, like their guest appearances on all of the above, is that there's something about the message they're portraying that makes you think, whoa, these people are smart, or these people do things in a different way, or these clearly seem to be like, there's something that sets them apart. They have a strategy or an expertise that is unique. That's not me too. Strategic differentiation, that there's something that you're doing in your approach, in your thinking, in your strategy, and that's different. And we have a blog post on Grow and Convert, if you Google Grow and Convert positioning, that kind of talks about this. There's like 4-ish components of like, when you position your company, you think about, what problem am I solving, for whom? I'm missing one of them, but the key thing that I wanted to talk about is, and then show the proof of it as well. So the difference is, like in Grow and Convert, going back to mine, what happened was we started it not as an agency. It started from that. I don't know how much Benji told you on that, but in that dinner conversation, he was saying all this stuff about how content marketing works. And I basically was like, okay, like then why don't you just start your own site, Benji? And like, if you know so much, he was like, I'm going to write a book. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. Like, what's a book going to do for you? $19? Like, what are you going to, if you know how to do this, this is extremely valuable. He basically was like, I know how to get B2B leads from content. And I was like, no, you don't. And then we were like fighting that. And then it said, if you know how to do it, then start your own site and just show it, grow that site. And he was like, that's a really good idea. And then do what with it? I was like, I don't know. You could sell training. You could sell all kinds of stuff. And he was like, why don't you do it with me? And I was like, no. And then eventually I got roped into it. And so my joke has always been, this is supposed to be a side project. And now it's like this big thing. So because we started out that way, we basically started with nothing, like a blank domain authority 0, like a new WordPress install. And we said, okay, we're going to start with a challenge. Like, we're going to grow the site in 6 months to 40,000 visitors and a 5,000 person email list. And we're going to document everything we're doing in doing that. And that immediately showed differentiation. Now, at that time, the strategic differentiation was it was in early stages. We didn't have it. We were just starting, but I can go back now and in hindsight be like, oh, look, see, there's a seed of this thing that turned into that thing now. But at that time, it was at least we got the proof in. People were following it. There was some differentiation. There was a brand. Like, these guys are literally documenting month over month traffic stuff, and we weren't succeeding.
Yeah.
We didn't make it, right? But because of that, we built another aspect of our brand that's hard to build. Or like brand, like what is brand? It's so nebulous. My current thinking of it is it's the reputation of what people expect from your thing. It's like, what are the expectations? Yeah. What do they know you for? And so like the things you output say that, your content, the words, the podcast, the documents, the blog posts, the copy. And so what we had done at that point is created a brand of transparency and detail. Is that people knew when they came to Grow and Convert, we were going to show in gross detail everything we were doing. It also had a brand of analytics around content marketing. These things ended up becoming extremely useful and are still part of our brand now. We weren't geniuses. We didn't know that back then. We just thought that would be cool, right? So we had some intuition that would be differentiating. There was that intuition was there, and even if the little pieces are not there. So we started that way. Years went by. I mean, all this stuff that Benji probably told you in the podcast, didn't make money, didn't know. I mean, it turned into an agency. But we built that following, and we had that culture of like, they're different because of X. They show everything. They talk about analytics in gross detail. They measure relentlessly, and then they really focus on the end results, like the leads and all, and that came later, right? Because of that, people come to us at Grow and Convert lead-wise and is like, I've been on your email list since 2018. We're recording this podcast in like mid-2020, right? And so like for years, I've been on this. I've been excited to have this conversation. I'm like excited to meet you guys. Like, what? Like, we're just like, we're random. And so GrowthRock doesn't have any of that. The stuff we output, the brand we position from blog posts, is the most random collection of nonsense. Total beat. Like because I didn't know anything then. I was just like writing about like guest posting. There was like a post, I probably took it down by now, it doesn't make any sense, about guest posting and like this. And it was an old blog about PowerPoint design and like social media statistics and like random stuff. Like it doesn't tell you anything. So you get to there and you're like, this is an e-commerce CRO firm. It has a couple case studies. Like, okay, like what? I don't know. Like, why are they better than these other firms that have a bigger name? But when you get to Grow and Convert, people literally email us and say, guys, I read one of your articles. It was so good. I spent literally the last couple of days, I devoured 20 of your articles. Like our articles are like 3,000 words minimum on there. That's not true. Like maybe somewhere shorter. But like the recent one I just published with a case study is like 5,000 words, which I was like, oh God. I keep it. So like it takes time. So they're like I devoured all of it. So because there's this message that's portrayed about all the things I said, detail, analytics, this and that. So decide what your strategic differentiation is. So I'll tell you now on GrowthRock, you're getting into CRO. So this is our positioning here. I decided to apply this and say, you know what? And there were times where I thought, I'm just going to let GrowthRock die. Like Dan will find another job. We like talked about it. Like this was all open. And it was just like, cause I don't have time to spend on it. It has no differentiation. It doesn't get leads, nothing. It's just like a sitting there with a couple of clients. And I was like, I don't want to spend my time on this. And, fast forward a bunch of like discussions and stuff, serendipitous clients, whatever. Now I've decided this is going to be my pet project right now for the next few months is like, I want to take all of these learnings I have about content and brand and positioning and turn it like, get this to have a brand. Even if we decide to keep it small and not get a bunch of clients, I just want the luxury of having those inbound leads. To just show, is this true? Like, have I learned something here? Like, can I make this work again? Because anyone can make one business work, right? Like a lot, not anyone, but a lot of people have made one business work and then they profess themselves as geniuses. And my question is always like, can you do it again? Could you do this again? Or was there some serendipitous stuff along the way, right? So in that, what I'm leaning on is GrowthRock can't differentiate by the brands. We don't have like famous e-commerce brands in our portfolio. We can't differentiate by size. We don't have 400 whatever clients, whatever. And we don't have some like proprietary process of this and that of like user research or like we haven't built eye tracking software or some stuff like that, right? Technology. So I really stopped and thought about like, why? Like, should we even do this? Are we good? And we started having some exposure to some other CRO teams' work. And we were like, oh God, like what they're doing does not seem to be that great. So like we do seem to be good. There's all these detail I'm skipping over. But what we realized is, here's what we do have now that we focused on e-commerce. We know a hell of a lot about e-commerce sites because we've tested so many things. And then this other aha came where CRO firms love to have profess this one message of treating like your site is this unique snowflakes. Like it's a black box. You don't know what's going to work. You can't take this other people's learnings and apply it to your site. Don't even touch it until you've done user research. Do this heat map and the scroll map and the committee map and all these maps and then do the live user testing and the surveys and the this and that. And only then should you even think about doing an A/B test. Bullshit. I call bullshit on that. So that's true when your CRO firm tests, an e-commerce site, then a SaaS site, then a travel site, then a media site, then a this. Yeah, like those things don't translate. You can't be like, all things need to be above the fold. What if you have some high-end, really long sales page type things? There are situations where the CTA shouldn't be above the fold, like things like that. So I'm 100% with them. But in e-commerce, in the year 2020, the brand positioning we're going to take is we have a lot of experience and we're just going to make it feel as though we have more, right? Because someone always has more experience than you.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about our experience in the details of e-commerce pages. And what we're going to say is, it's not a unique snowflake, because for your consumer in the year 2020, e-commerce has been around for a decade.
Yeah.
The consumer's interaction with your site is affected by their expectations and patterns they've learned through dozens or hundreds of other e-commerce sites they've shopped in their lifetime. So the way those sites behave and the patterns they learned and where to expect stuff, that affects what they expect when they're on your site. So it's not a unique snowflakes. It very much exists in an ecosystem where your users have expectations based on other people's sites. So you need to understand that. And so in that, we're saying all e-commerce sites have 5 to 6 swim lanes: a home, listing, product detail, checkout, navigation. We're calling them swim lanes. And we're saying what we're creating right now as we speak, there's like Trello cards of designs and an Excel spreadsheet, is we are documenting every single A/B test we've run for all of our e-commerce clients, categorized by those swim lanes, and within them, in the take the product detail page. Product detail page, for people that don't know, in e-commerce is the page where you add an item to cart. You see like the image on the left, add to cart. And we're saying we're going to group these by section of the product detail page. Tests we've done on that image area. Scroll through image carousel, videos, blah, blah, blah. Tests we've done on the add to cart area. Pricing, size, quantity, add to cart, subscription, blah, blah, blah. Tests we've done below on the reviews. And then imagine that for all the other pages. Tests we've done on the listing where you see all the products, the filters, the sorting, the blah, blah, blah. Tests on the nav, tests on the homepage, tests on the checkout page. So when you get to the GrowthRock site, when you read our content, the brand positioning we're trying to create is, oh my God, if I'm an e-commerce store owner and I'm interested in CRO, I for sure have had debates and discussions on my team about like, guys, we really need to test the filters on the listing page with this thing, or we need to test sticky add to cart versus that. When you get to our site and you see all of these case studies and literally a live dashboard of all tests, and month after we finish the test, we're adding on to it. These people have done hundreds of tests, and look, they've tested those filters. Look, there's tests that's literally called hide and remove filters on like listing page or whatever. You've seen that. No other brands may have more, they for sure, larger CRO firms have more experience than us. They don't have such a dashboard. They're not talking about it. So there's two things there. There's like the experience, what do you have? And then what can you talk about it? Like what Benji and I are doing, Grow and Convert, like this is marketing. Like let's be honest. In digital marketing, what are any of us doing that's truly, truly unique, right?
Yeah.
But not everyone talks about it because they're bad at marketing themselves, right? They're busy. So what do they see when they're on your site? What is the message they get? So in GrowthRock, it's now going to be from a total haphazard, scattershot, nonsensical, completely unrelated collection of articles and like a homepage that maybe looks kind of, neatly polished, but it's just like, okay, like they've done some e-commerce CRO. Like I don't know why they're better. To like, holy crap, there's literally a live dashboard. And then each of those tests is going to have this other concept, strategic differentiation. That's one strategy. We have another strategy we've talked about called, we're not basing A/B tests on hypothesis anymore. This just got published this week. We're doing it on a thing we're devising called the question mentality. We're basing everything on a cascading series of questions. So you don't say, I hypothesize that changing, the product images to this is going to increase conversion rate. We think that it's limited. We think it has issues. Instead, we're going to ask, everything is going to be framed around asking questions, and it has all these benefits. So when you read that, you're like, damn, these people have thought a lot about this. Then you see they have literally a live dashboard of 700 e-commerce A/B tests. Look, like Bill, we were just talking about this thing. They have tests on that. And then they have this framework around this thing that I haven't even gotten into called each of the tests have a factor that I think everything in e-commerce, not only is there 5 swim lanes, there's 5-ish factors of every CRO thing you can do, which is brand. Does it help improve the brand of your site? Product discovery. Does it help help users find the product? Product appeal. To help them want the product. UX friction, just simple like, checkout feels no friction. And lastly, maybe that was it. 4, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going back.
That's fine.
So that is in the works. So when all of this is in place, this is why I'm saying it's in my next few months project. When that's in place, then there's something. Will that mean that we're the greatest e-commerce CRO firm? Probably not.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be. The point is there is a consistent message of strategic differentiation when you get there. Yeah. So I told you this was going to take a long time.
And no. This is great. I'm curious with in the early days of GrowthRock, knowing what you know now, when you were just getting started for example, in my position, the way that I've thought about this, similar to your take on not everything's unique snowflake, things can be the same. I've kind of thought the same thing because I actually learning CRO. I was like, all right, if I'm going to actually start trying to provide this as a service, basically just being like you did for Brian Dean, hey, I'll do this for $400 a month or whatever. Or I'll do this for free and just for the case study and the learning, etc. Yeah. But you don't have
strategic differentiation. So what the hell do you say?
No, exactly. Yeah. So at that point, how do you start thinking about that? And do you try and come up with something, or do you just start pick somewhere you want to be and start working towards it? How would you think about that?
Yeah, great question. This can be answered in a lot of different ways. I don't know if I have a one answer for it or a clear one, but I think a few different things can work. So I think that's a positive. Is strategy number 1. If you don't feel like you have any idea for strategic differentiation, don't force it yet, right? Because that's the honest thing to do. Because if you're a beginner on something, I was a beginner back then, what the hell was I going to say about A/B testing?
Yeah.
Right? Anything I said would come across to anyone who knew anything as just complete BS, right? And so don't force it. But here's what you should do is document. So have a medium. For us, it's been written content. That's what we are. I love writing. I consider myself kind of a writer to be in a weird way. And it can be a podcast. It can be whatever. There's a lot of advantages to writing, side note, which is that it's indexed by Google. It's easy to scan. It's not easy to scan a video or a podcast. Yeah. But do what is natural to you. Okay. So pick a medium to where you're really playing with this. Okay. Whatever your medium is, also create an email list. So your podcast and whatever is not the only way to get in touch with your audience. YouTube or Apple Podcast subscription is not owning your relationship with your customers. So have an email list as well. There's some logistics to get in place. Now, document what you're doing and why from a client work perspective. So Shane, what you're doing here is great. It may get you some leads, but it's not the same because your Shopify store owner that's hiring design and development, do they care about this conversation?
Oh, no. That's why that's going to be a completely separate thing.
That's a separate thing, right?
That's a whole separate thing.
In addition to that, have your list, basically, and be constantly talking about the details of the work you're doing and just talk openly and honestly like what we did at Grow and Convert and talk about your thinking about this differentiation. Send short updates. Write short blog posts like, hey, right now I'm starting to think, and show the level of detail that you're thinking in it. Because even if you don't have a strategic difference, even if you don't know, there is a dearth, there's a lack in the world of, especially in marketing world, of detailed discussion of the work people are doing. People write these high, airy-fairy blog posts of general ways or whatever. But if you had an email list in your thing of the detailed problems you are solving in Shopify development of getting this thing and add to cart. I've had leads come in for GrowthRock already from our recent client literally came in, switched CRO firms after this from a blog post about sticky add to cart buttons. Because he was thinking about his add to cart buttons sticking to the top of the page as people scroll. Like that's so specific. So like write and talk about that, and then start to use that medium to play with your initial ideas. Like, hey, you know, I'm noticing this pattern that Shopify store owners have this recurring issue of XYZ. I'm not 100% like sure, but this is some early thinking. Here's what I'm thinking you should solve it for. Like, you know, that in your case, it'd be like, people are spending a lot of time on like this IT blah, blah, blah. Their way of collecting development requests is broken. They need to just use a simple Trello thing. Like these have existed before in the SaaS world, and you're not doing it. Like, just talk about that. And I almost guarantee you, because I've lived it, that gets you clients. If you then have other marketing stuff in place of getting like traffic to that place or whatever, because no one else is talking in that level of detail. It's taking what we're doing in our database of e-commerce tests. Is like, probably other CRO firms have a bigger database. They're not talking about it. There's a famous story that I'll maybe kind of end with here, since we're a couple minutes in, is I heard this from some famous, really old-fashioned marketing, like business consultant guy, who told a story about, I don't know when, like the 80s, let's say, like years ago, of him doing some consulting for like a beer manufacturer in like the Midwest back in a long time ago, right, in the US. And he took a tour of the factory, and they showed him all this detail and said, look, like the wheat we're getting is so specific. And then we treat it in this specific way. And then when we distill it, it's very specific. Taste this, look at this, do this machine. And then he was like, my God, this is what we're going to do. We're going to tell everyone the way. We're going to say this beer was brewed cold and done this way. And I don't know if it was Coors or whatever. And he said, we're going to show them all this and talk about this to the consumer. And they were like, no, that's not going to work, because everyone brews beer this way. And the marketing consultant said something I've never forgotten, which he said, that may be true, but no one else talks about it. So we have an SEO consultant, Grow and Convert. This guy is, in my mind, an SEO genius. He can do just the craziest shit. And he's helped us. And we're just like, what? How did you get us to rank for this? And I'm like, you need to start your own personal brand and blog, even though he has like a full-time job at a company. And he's not like a consultant or whatever. And he says the same thing. He's like, no, nothing I do is unique. This has been well known in SEO for a while. I'm like, I don't care. Just show the results of what you're doing. So in your thing, like what could you do, Shane, in Shopify design and development that is inventing a new rocket to the moon or a cure for cancer? You're not gonna patent something. But no one else is talking about it. I mean, people are, but they're not doing it well. And even if they're doing it well, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
That detail, that's where I would start, is find the medium, pick a medium and stick to it. Don't be like, I'm going to have a podcast and a YouTube channel and a this and a that. Like, good luck, right? Like, who are you? Like, the New York Times, like some media publication, like, come on. And so pick a medium, double down on that medium, get an email list or something where you own the connection to the followers. That's really important. And then share your work, and then think about strategic differentiation, and just keep playing with it and see where people are emailing you back. Ask them for feedback. Say, hey, leave a comment. Hey, reply to the email. Tell me what you think. People will do that, and you'll start to get semblances of it. So in Grow and Convert, the reason it was so much easier is we just kind of stumbled backwards into that. Like, we just did it because we had no other choice. Benji had a job. I had my agency. Like, it was just a project where we literally were just doing it. Like, you know, and in hindsight, it was a smart idea. We're like, we didn't know. But, and so we just talked about everything we're doing, and people started being like, can you just do my marketing? Can you just do the content? Because like whatever you've done is awesome. Right. So that's what I'll leave with.
No, this has been, wow, there's so much here. I feel like I could just like pull out so many nuggets from.
I'm happy to come back if you want to deep dive into any of the other stuff.
Yeah, no, I'd love to have you back. And I think basically, just to wrap up here, the idea is that I'm building, kind of creating content and doing all that for a separate brand. And this is just like my personal YouTube, where I'm kind of documenting what I'm doing and speaking to people like you and trying to get all these insights. And I think that, we're at the end of the hour here. I'd love to, we could dive into any of these topics, probably talk for another long time. And as I learn new things, I think I'll have new perspectives, and we can, I'll have more things to even ask you more questions.
Yeah, here's what I'm happy to do if you want, is if you want to do a short episode on like trying to case study your thing, and I ask you questions and we try to suss out like how can you position, what differentiators you already have. Like, happy to do it. That can be fun.
Yeah. Let's definitely do that. I'll send, I'll follow up with you with an email, and we'll talk about setting something like that up. And this has been really awesome. I know it's 3:00 now. I've got to jump and speak with someone else. This, I don't know. This was just really awesome. I didn't know what to expect, and you gave me so much to think about. So I will follow up with you. Everyone else, where can they find you real quick before we hop off of here if they want to ask you questions themselves?
So you can email me at davish@growthrock.co or davish@growandconvert.com. Davish is spelled non-intuitively Devesh, or both of those places have email lists. None of them I talk about my philosophies on business. What you're doing is great, Shane. I have thought for a long time and fantasized, and I may actually have a separate personal email list where we just talk about growing businesses and this kind of stuff. It doesn't belong on either of those. But any of those places, you can find me on Twitter, at Devesh Khanal, DeveshKhanal.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Right. I will follow up with you, and we'll set up another time to talk.
Awesome. See you, Shane.
Thanks.
Okay.